Senator Rand Paul just released a video calling for an end to government measures infringing on our liberties to combat the pandemic and saying that it's time to peacefully resist the would-be tyrants and petty bureaucrats who want to run our lives into perpetuity. And of course, the internet freaked out, with left-wing Twitter and many in the media having an absolute meltdown in response to the senator's viral remarks. But was there really anything wrong with what Senator Paul had to say? Let's break it down. But first, welcome back to my channel and welcome to Breaking Brad, a series where we break down the big picture issues in our politics and in our news from a free market, libertarian, conservative perspective, but we help separate fiction from fact and help you understand what's really going on. Make sure if you're new here that you subscribe to this channel, turn on the bell notifications, and like this video. Guys, show me some love. If you're a regular watcher or listener and you don't hit that like button, know my feelings are personally hurt. Now, let's get back to Senator Paul. I think before we get into the actual video, it might be fun to look at the response to Senator Paul's video and see just, how the criticisms of him that were made were totally logical and sane reactions. Because when you see the criticisms and then you look at the actual video, which I'm going to show you, you're going to see that the outrage is pretty disproportionate to the actual content. So I only spent a couple of minutes looking for a few quick examples because there were literally thousands of hateful tweets about the man in response to this video. But let's just look at a couple here. From one person said, "It's beyond madness at this point. His comments are mass murder now." Another person said, "Rand Paul is a sociopath." Aaron Rupar, a supposed journalist at Vox, labeled him Senator Rand Paul, R-COVID-19. Another blue check journalist said there is a special place in hell for people like Rand Paul. And of course, a Democrat running for Congress in Kentucky accused Senator Paul of promoting COVID-19 disinformation and said he's chasing conspiracies, he's trying to find the boogeyman, and he's inciting lawlessness and fear-mongering. It's going to cost us lives. So based on that, you would think that what the senator had to say was something crazy because they're literally accusing him of killing people with his words. But let's break down this actual video so you can see that there's nothing to these hyperbolic criticisms at all. The first thing that Senator Paul does is admittedly controversial, but he calls on people to peacefully resist the reimposition of these mandates and masks and other things imposed by us, by the government. Take a listen to what he had to say.
It's time for us to resist. They can't arrest all of us. They can't keep all of your kids home from school. They can't keep every government building closed, although I've got a long list of ones they might keep closed or might ought to keep closed. We don't have to accept the mandates, lockdowns, and harmful policies of the petty tyrants and bureaucrats. We can simply say no, not again.
I don't see anything wrong with what the senator had to say there at all. He's not calling for violence or anything of the sort. People who are saying that, that's totally not true. All he's saying is that we need to reclaim our agency, reclaim our liberty, go back about our lives, and stop letting the government tell us what to do and dictate the minutia of our life. Because even if you believe, and I don't believe this, but even if you believe that at the beginning of the pandemic, some of that stuff, the mask mandates, the lockdowns, was justified because of the spread of COVID-19, that's no longer the case because the calculus has changed. There's no longer an externality. Now, anybody who wants a COVID vaccine can get one. I got one. I encourage you to get one if you want to. But because anybody who wants to be can be highly protected from serious illness and death by these vaccines, there's no longer any case of any kind to say that the government should be able to micromanage our lives and take away our freedom. There's simply not, and there's nothing wrong with Senator Paul saying that we shouldn't stand for it as citizens anymore, because if we don't stand up, guess what? Government bureaucrats and petty politicians, like he says, they love power, and they've been able to expand their power to no end during this pandemic, and they're not going to give it up unless we fight for it. So there's nothing wrong there at all. The next point Senator Paul makes is to take aim at federal bureaucrats and agencies like the CDC who have messed up time and time again in this pandemic and also don't actually go to work.
No one should follow the CDC's anti-science mask mandates. And if you want to shut down federal agencies again, some of which aren't even back to work yet, I will stop every bill coming through the Senate with an amendment to cut their funding if they don't come back to work in person.
Hey, look, as far as I'm concerned, what he just said there is spot on. These agencies like the CDC and FDA, they messed up COVID testing at the beginning of the pandemic, not allowing private labs to make their own tests and forcing everyone to use a government test that didn't work. They botched masks, telling everybody different things about masks. They have made mistakes time and time again. For example, school closures. They were on the wrong side of that issue for months and months and months before they reversed. And now, all Rand is saying is that we can't trust these people with permanent power. And in fact, the point he's making about the federal agencies, that hits home for me because I live near the USPTO, the US Patent and Trade Office. Now, I will tell you, this federal building is the bougiest thing I have ever seen in my neighborhood. It has a deluxe gym, these massive offices that honestly, it looks like it could be a 5-star hotel's kind of like venue or for conferences or something. And it's been empty, just sitting empty for a year because we still have to pay for it, of course. But all these federal bureaucrats are just working remotely and they're not really doing their jobs. So those agencies, a lot of them shouldn't exist, first of all, a lot of those federal bureaucrats. But the ones that do, if they're going to expect everyone across America who are essential workers to go back to work, yes, the government should too, and there's nothing wrong at all with what Senator Paul is saying and doing in that portion. The final thing, and this part is controversial, but it's honestly probably the part where he's the most spot on and the most in touch with the American people, the public at large, Democrats, Republicans, Independents. Senator Paul goes after the unions, he goes after the people who want to keep schools closed, who fought to keep schools closed, and who want to put kids in masks into perpetuity. Here's what he had to say.
Every adult who works in schools has either had the vaccine or had their chance to get vaccinated. There is no reason for mask mandates, part-time schools, or any lockdown measures. Children are falling behind in school and are being harmed physically and psychologically by the tactics that you have used to keep them from the classroom during the last year. We won't allow it again. If a school system attempts to keep children from full-time in-person school, I will hold up every bill with 2 amendments, one to defund them and another to allow parents the choice of where the money goes for their child's education.
Hey, you can inject that portion of the speech right there into my veins. As far as I'm concerned, that's all spot on. I mean, schools need to be open. Kids do not need to be forced into masks in the classroom. Kids are at extremely minimal risk of severe illness and death from COVID-19. And every adult, like I said, teachers, union officials, teachers, janitors even, they all have access to a free and safe COVID vaccine if they want to. So there is no argument at all for these people to try to infringe on schools or normal lives because Senator Paul's totally correct. We have seen massive damage in terms of learning loss and lower test scores and kids dropping out of the system and lifelong projected declines in earnings, particularly for low-income and minority students, according to McKinsey analysis. So these school shutdowns and restrictions were incredibly harmful. Kids are not at a high risk from COVID-19, that's established fact, and every adult in the education system needs to put the kids first and has every opportunity to protect themselves. So school reopenings and not restricting kids, that is something popular with huge swaths of the American public, left, right, independent, and there's nothing that Senator Paul just said there that's controversial at all, in my opinion. Now let's just take a look at his kind of closing remarks in this video.
Will we allow these people to use fear and propaganda to do further harm to our society, economy, and children? Or will we stand together and say, absolutely not, not this time, I choose freedom?
If what Senator Paul just said there is extreme, then any American who values their own freedom is an extremist. Because all he's saying is that these government officials and these petty bureaucrats, what they've done is they've taken this crisis and they've exploited it to to push through massive infringements on our freedom, nationwide confiscation of the rental market with the so-called eviction moratorium, restrictions and mandates about what you can do with your own body, closing people's businesses, outlawing some people's livelihoods. All these things, trillions of dollars of our money taken away and spent to their heart's desires. These are things we never would have accepted, and they're trying to make many of them permanent or just stretch them on and on and on. I mean, California Governor Gavin Newsom still has not relinquished his emergency powers. So, all Senator Paul is saying, and all that, honestly, anyone who values freedom should agree with him on, is that we can't let these people scare us into submission and steal our freedoms into the future. Because if we don't resist, that's exactly what they will do. Thanks for watching this video, guys, and if you're new to this channel, make sure that you are subscribed and turn on the bell notifications so you actually see my content and we don't have to rely on the big tech overlords at YouTube. If you enjoyed this video or you're one of my regular viewers, make sure that you like and comment below. It really helps us in the algorithm. And while you're at it, guys, I actually have an interview with Senator Paul for this channel that will be just above in the videos to check out next. Make sure to check out our conversation about Dr. Fauci and COVID-19 and the federal bureaucracy to know more on this important subject. And with that, I will see you all in the next video.